the perfect lunch combo. That first bite of your favorite sub, followed by ice-cold Pepsi. Add a couple of friends, and now that's next level. Suddenly, the laughs get louder, the stories keep flowing, and the food tastes better. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. But for those Americans, and I think it's a majority of Americans, who would like to see a quick exit from the war on Iran and in Iran, that exit seems to be, well, there's a different kind of entrance that is going on. The U.S. is preparing to send the aircraft carrier USS George Washington to the Middle East to replace the USS Abraham Lincoln as part of a previously scheduled rotation plan that, according to U.S. officials familiar with the matter, the Lincoln has undergone an extended deployment with few port calls, prompting lawmakers to raise concerns about living conditions aboard the ship. And this is one of the most powerful, most effective naval craft in any navy in the world. The Abraham Lincoln began a scheduled deployment in November of last year, obviously, and was redirected to the Middle East in January ahead of the U.S. war against Iran. The carrier and its embarked aircraft were instrumental to the U.S.'s Operation Epic Fury bombing campaign. And the ship has since participated in the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports. And speaking of Iranian ports, despite President Donald Trump's claim yesterday on Truth Social that the U.S. has total control over the Strait of Hormuz, Iran promptly reaffirmed that it was still blocking most transit through the waterway and would keep it closed until the U.S. basically surrenders and accepts Iran's demands for a peace settlement, including reparations payment to Iran of damage that has been done to their country and to their local sites, both military and civilian, by the U.S. Bombing campaign. Shipping data from Kepler showed that only 8 vessels transited the Strait of Hormuz via Iran's own permitted shipping lane. And insurers have pulled back from covering ships attempting the transit. Iran's demands are that the U.S. end its naval blockade on Iranian ports, that America agrees to a region-wide ceasefire, including in Gaza and Lebanon, lifts sanctions against Iran, releases frozen Iranian assets totaling hundreds of billions of dollars, and provides compensation for previous attacks and for previous damage to resources on the ground in Iran. A senior Iranian source told Reuters that there had been no talks between the U.S. and Iran regarding extending the 60-day ceasefire agreed to in the Memorandum of Understanding signed in June, a pact that Trump declared was over in July. Well, it was a 60-day pact, and it lasted less than 30 days. Meanwhile, also in terms of national security and foreign affairs, CNN is reporting that the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is urging, actually pleading with the United States to sell Ukraine more Patriot interceptor missiles as Russian attacks pound the country. However, there is a global shortage of the missiles due to the U.S. war with Iran, and where the U.S. and Gulf states used dozens of Patriot missiles to counter Iranian attacks. The shortage is costing Ukraine most acutely, where cities some nights appeared defenseless against Moscow's rocket assaults. They're not drone assaults. They're guided missiles. They're rockets. Zelensky said that if the U.S. sells Ukraine 5%, we will go through the winter and save people's lives. If they can sell us 10%, we will destroy all the Russians' ballistic missiles. I have 1% right now. He is said he is pressing the United States and the White House directly and through allies for more assistance, though it remains unclear where the Trump administration stands on the request. Meanwhile, there are several other issues where the position of the Trump administration is a little bit unclear. The board of the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, and no, it is no longer the Trump Kennedy Center of Performing Arts, even though they still have covered up the lettering on the building is covered up with blankets and tarp, and so that you can't read where it says the Trump Kennedy Center. In any event, the board has voted today to move forward with President Trump's plan to close the whole building of the Kennedy Center for renovation. That, according to several people with direct knowledge of the proceedings, the decision will be subject to the approval of a federal judge who found that the board had been derelict in scrutinizing the plan ahead of the original vote, because the board is all Trump appointees. He fired everybody else. Mr. Trump announced in February that the center would close for 2 years with the objective of transforming what he called a tired, broken, and dilapidated institution that, by the way, was still drawing pretty good attendance. The board voted today to close the Kennedy Center's main building while keeping a newer addition to the campus known as The Reach open for limited programming and to operate as an active memorial to John F. Kennedy. The resolution that was approved notes that the decision was made based on an independent and objective analysis of possible options by an outside consulting firm, same kind of consulting firm that did the reflecting pool of the Lincoln Memorial. I'll leave that alone. Meanwhile, that outside consulting firm determined that keeping the main building open during renovations would be significantly more costly. It notes that the board is fully committed to continue arts and educational programming during the closure and to maintain the historic and architecturally significant nature of the center's main building. But this, by the way, is subject to the approval of a federal judge who in the past has not approved President Trump's policies regarding the Kennedy Center. And talking about approving policies, a federal judge in Boston today, just now, dismissed an anti-Semitism lawsuit against Harvard University, dealing a blow to the Trump administration's efforts to force the university to make a deal with the federal government about how they are handling incidents of anti-Semitism. The lawsuit was part of a broader pressure campaign to force the university to comply with a range of government demands, including how it handles anti-Semitism, but also race in admissions and other issues. Judge Richard Stearns of the U.S. District Court in Massachusetts granted Harvard's motion to throw out the case, saying that the anti-Semitic incidents cited in the administration's lawsuit were too isolated and episodic to show that Harvard is out of compliance with the law. We'll get to more. And the impact of this week's primary elections on the campaign for 2028. That coming up on the Medved Show.
Late night bites with friends? Already hard to beat. That first too hot bite of fries you couldn't wait for, followed by ice cold Pepsi. Now that hits different. Suddenly, the energy kicks back in, the night goes longer, and the laughs don't stop. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
And on the Michael Medved Show, we spoke earlier about the decision by the board of the Kennedy Center. The board of the Kennedy Center is entirely not Kennedy devotees, but Donald Trump loyalists. And they had decided that they were going to shut down the Kennedy Center for reconstruction and rebuilding for 2 years. And this may have gone against a judge's ruling. There is also the idea that putting Trump's name on the building was against the policy by Congress, which had authorized the building in the first place shortly after Kennedy's assassination. So it was built to honor President Kennedy. But then President Trump and his board members decided that it should also include the name of Trump and become the Trump Kennedy Center. But now they're going back on that. They had tried to follow the rule of the judicial ruling that said that no, they couldn't have Trump's name on the building, but it's still there, covered over by actually they look like blankets that are there covering Trump's name on the outside of the building. And the headline just breaking today, because the Kennedy Center met today, the board, Kennedy Center board decides to inscribe Trump's name again on building. The vote was to add restored and renovated by President Donald J. Trump. That vote was, as described in the New York Times, an aggressive test of a judge's order to remove Trump's name. The board of the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts voted today to inscribe President Trump's name on the building beneath the main signage, aggressively testing a federal judge's order to remove it, according to people with direct knowledge of the proceedings. According to the resolution approved by the Trump-allied board, the inscription beneath the institution's name would read, "Restored and renovated by President Donald J. Trump." The board's decision came shortly after it voted to move forward with Mr. Trump's controversial plan to shutter the building for renovation. The president's name was added to the building last year, but the judge ordered the letters taken down, finding that only Congress had the authority to change the institution's name. The center removed Mr. Trump's name in June, but is appealing the ruling. In Thursday's resolution, the board directed officials to undertake all legal means to honor Mr. Trump for bringing the center back from the brink of disaster. All legal means to honor President Trump for bringing the building back from disaster. And this goes along with their attempt to shut down the building or any kinds of concerts or dramatic presentations or performances that would take place in the building, to shut it down for 2 years. Now, this goes with another revelation based on a research by Mediaite that appeared today. What does President Trump talk about most of the time? And in 2026, he's spoken more about the Iran war and Operation Epic Fury than any other subject. That's to be expected. But what's number two? The headline says, and it's important to understand, Trump has spent more time talking about his construction projects in 2026 than any topic except the Iran war, study finds. President Trump devoted more of his public remarks this year to his construction projects than virtually any other major issue facing the nation, except the Iran war. The PolitiFact analysis examined Trump's recorded public statements from January through July, after its reporters noticed the president repeatedly returning to projects including the White House ballroom and Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool, and you can add the Kennedy Center, and also the Triumphal Arch that he wants to build in Washington going over the bridge. The analysis found that Trump devoted nearly 45,000 words to construction and beautification projects over the 7-month period, mentioning them during 84 public events across 66 separate days this year. Those appearances accounted for more than a quarter of all of his public events during that time. Among events where construction came up, Trump spent more time discussing the projects than subjects that included immigration or the economy, according to the report. How many Americans do you think care more about these public projects like the Garden of Heroes he's planning to build, or the Triumphal Arch that is supposed to be almost 3 times taller than the Arch of Triumph in the Arc de Triomphe in Paris? Among the events where construction came up, Trump spent more time discussing the projects than subjects that included immigration and the economy or anything else other than Iran, according to the report. Only Iran and the Iran war surpassed construction, generating nearly 56,000 words and appearing in 73 of those 84 events. PolitiFact reporters compiled the figures by analyzing Trump's recorded spoken words at official events, signing ceremonies, press conferences, and pre-recorded messages. The analysis did not include print interviews or posts on Truth Social, where Trump has also regularly discussed the projects more than anything else. The study found a notable divide between what Trump chose to discuss and what reporters asked him about. Construction ranked as his top subject during unprompted remarks at events where the projects were mentioned. When Trump was answering reporters' questions, however, the Iran war took the top spot. Imagine that people thought the war was more important than some of the details of the signage on the Kennedy Center. Karl Rove says the Democrats are getting to just barely dodge desperate trouble, but Republicans are taking proper advantage of this opportunity. We'll get to that and more coming up on the Medved Show.
Late night bites with friends? Already hard to beat. That first too hot bite of fries you couldn't wait for, followed by ice cold Pepsi. Now that hits different. Suddenly, the energy kicks back in, the night goes longer, and the laughs don't stop. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
And on the Michael Medved Show, it is fairly rare when the leading news outlets, liberal, conservative, moderate, the leading news outlets all run very similar headlines about a political event. But the Wisconsin primary that was narrowly lost by Francesca Hong, who was a part of the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, she almost won, and that produced the following headlines. The Washington Post had an editorial that was under the headline, "The Wisdom of the Cheeseheads." Yes, voters in Wisconsin, people in Wisconsin generally, whether they vote or not, are often referred to as cheeseheads. The people who are big fans of the Green Bay Packers, because Green Bay, of course, a football team representing the great state of Vermont and producer of cheese. The wisdom of the cheeseheads, and then in the Washington Post, the subheading, "Democrats can give thanks to Wisconsin voters as the party battles DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, mania." And then there's in Politico, they have a very similar headline, "Democrats got lucky in Wisconsin. They should learn from it." And then in the Wall Street Journal, their headline was, "Wacky Francesca Hong almost won in Wisconsin." And the subhead, "Her loss in the primary for governor is a welcome lesson, but 300,000 Democrats still voted for socialism." They write as an editorial from the editorial board in the Wall Street Journal, clever first line, "Thanksgiving came early to Wisconsin this year after Democratic primary voters on Tuesday decided to pass on radical socialism." Francesca Hong widely led gubernatorial polls, but her message of public grocery stores and a 17% income tax didn't carry, and she narrowly lost by about 4,000 ballots as of yesterday's count. She lost to Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley. Pragmatic Democrats who want to win in November, writes the Wall Street Journal, must feel relieved, since Mr. Crowley is a superior candidate against the GOP nominee, Representative Tom Tiffany, who has to now be favored after this divisive primary. But Mr. Crowley is campaigning on party priorities, such as universal early childhood education and climate action. But Democrats won't now be asked about Ms. Hong's tweets calling the Pilgrims colonizers and pushing to abolish the police and to abolish Thanksgiving. Maybe almost as offensive or maybe more offensive than abolishing the police. Now, all of this gives the Democrats and a tremendous vulnerability coming up to the midterm elections. And there's a piece by Karl Rove that every Republican running for high office should read and heed. And it's under the headline, 7 Steps to Defeat Dems and the DSA. And they point out that Mr. Trump got 49.8% of the popular vote in 2024. That's what elected him, less than a majority. And he had a 1.5-point victory in 2024 against Kamala Harris because, by my estimation, about 14% or 15% of voters decided that for all his flaws, they'd still vote for Trump. Things were better when he was in office, and they wouldn't stand and couldn't stand 4 more years of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. She was an extension of the Biden presidency. It was risky, but voting for Mr. Trump was voting for change. No longer. But these reluctant 2024 Trump supporters are still crucial. Winning them, writes Karl Rove, winning them over this fall requires that Republicans do 7 things. First, don't gaslight voters. The president claimed in Las Vegas that he produced the greatest economy we've ever had so far, with the cost of rent, groceries, and other staples coming down very fast. How many swing voters, asked Karl Rove, believe that. Claims that collide with Americans' day-to-day experience got Mr. Biden into trouble, and now Mr. Trump too. Second, Karl Rove advises, a screaming communist won't win additional votes. Instead, use a Democratic candidate's own words and policies. Remember the Trump 24 they-them ad featuring footage of Kamala Harris endorsing transgender surgery for convicts. Make Democratic candidates eat anything they say that's extreme. Third, don't let Democrats get away with disavowing past outrageous positions. Point out how convenient their changes are. Ask when and why they change their minds. Raise doubts, suggesting that they're untrustworthy and nothing keeps them from reverting to those extreme views. And fourth, don't let Democrats escape from dangerous associations. If someone like Hassan Piker campaigned for them or another Democrat on the state ticket, make every Democrat defend and comment every terrible comment Mr. Piker has made. And ask why Democrats would ever associate with someone like that. And then fifth, Karl Rove advises, Republicans, especially those running against candidates endorsed by the Democratic Socialists of America or opponents who share their state ticket with DSA-backed Democrats, must explain why the DSA's agenda won't work and will hurt voters. The DSA doesn't want Americans to have a landlord or a mortgage. That logically means that government would assign your housing, and you couldn't accumulate wealth by buying a home and letting it grow in value. And this kind of practicality in terms of winning the election deserves a great deal of attention and serious response on the part of Republicans everywhere who are trying to defend the majority in the House of Representatives, which is a very tough fight, and to defend the Republican majority in the U.S. Senate, which is a more doable battle for the Republican side. Meanwhile, there is President Trump's own claims, the kind of claims that Karl Rove just criticized, claims that we live in a golden age, that things are better than ever, things that most people don't see reflected in their personal status. We will get to that and those issues coming up here on the Medved Show.
This episode is brought to you by Adobe Firefly, the all-in-one creative studio with AI-powered image and video generation. Built for today's creative process, Firefly helps you generate, edit, and experiment fast. Because the asks aren't getting smaller, and the timelines? Woo, yeah, still tight. With all the best creative AI models in one place, Firefly brings your ideas to life. Learn more at adobe.com/firefly.
And Karl Rove, who knows something about winning elections and winning difficult elections, because both of his races that he managed for George W. Bush post the victory over Al Gore in the year 2000 and the victory over John Kerry in 2004, those victories were structured and planned and plotted by Karl Rove. And he says now in the Wall Street Journal today that Mr. Trump's yelling communist gets headlines but won't convert swing voters. And it drowns out messages Republicans need in order to win. And what are those messages like? Those messages are messages that provide a better way, like simply not simply running on having done a good job last year. They must show concrete plans to make things better next year. There was practically none of that in the president's hour-plus Las Vegas speech. Near its end, he spent 39 seconds on a new health care plan and 1 minute on the SAVE Act. Not enough. GOP candidates had better offer more fresh ideas and spend plenty of time on them, because people do say that they want to change. And instead, what you hear about is, from President Trump directly, like what you hear in clip 17 about the state of the nation.
And we had a great time in Ohio, a fantastic time in Ohio. The country's doing well. The stock market's fantastic record. We have 79 records so far in a short period of time. More people are working right now in the United States than ever before, and prices are dropping fast. Iran is going fine, going just absolutely fine. We totally control the Strait of Hormuz. We have control over it. Nobody else, only us. Our Navy is unbelievable, and things are going great for our country.
He claimed we have 79 records. What does that mean exactly? And again, if you go through just that brief clip about the Golden Age, there are dramatic lies that are included there, including the very prominent lie, we totally control the Strait of Hormuz. And now Bret Baier, who is one of the most capable and reliable voices on Fox News or in American media generally, Bret Baier undercuts Trump's Iran claim and talks about the realities of the Strait of Hormuz. Again, this is Bret Baier on Fox. This is clip 26.
The government's energy outlook. The Energy Information Administration raised its forecast for the average price of a gallon of gasoline over the full year by 14 cents. You can see right here. It also raised its 2026 forecast for Brent crude from $82 a barrel to $87 a barrel. And there's another problem building as well. The International Energy Agency says global crude oil inventories fell by 2.2 million barrels a day in July. It expects a global supply deficit of 1.8 million barrels a day in the third quarter. That's more than double its previous estimate. Now, let's move west to the second choke point, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. It is a critical choke point here. It is a global sea route for Europe, the United States, and Asia. This narrow passage, actually, between Yemen and the Horn of Africa connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden and the Arabian Sea. Most exports of petroleum and natural gas from the Persian Gulf cross both the Strait of Hormuz and right here, both of them. The Iran-backed Houthis are once again threatening traffic in this waterway.
The International Energy Agency says global crude oil inventories fell by 2.2 million barrels a day in July, and that basically the Iran claim that we now totally control the Strait of Hormuz, that doesn't explain why traffic has slowed, as Bret Baier says, really to a trickle. But then again, President Trump has other things to talk about, not just the lettering on the outside of the Kennedy Center or his plans for building a big triumphal arch or actually finally fixing the reflecting pool outside the Lincoln Memorial. He also wants to talk about his near escapes from the malicious and malevolent and evil regime in Iran. Here's how he spoke recently about the decoy plane on which he was flown to try to reduce his risks of actually being assassinated by the Iranians.
Only up to Secret Service. I just follow what they'd like to do. So I go by Secret Service. and the military. They wanted me to go on a different flight, a different plane, equal safety, but they wanted me to do it, so I do it. I do what they say. Well, I don't know. I think actually the plane that I flew on was at greater risk. I think it was at greater risk because that would be the plane I think that they would be more likely to go for. I don't worry about anything, to be honest. Whatever it is, my attitude, it's whatever.
Okay, he's talking about life and death here. And again, after saying very sensibly and very appropriately that he follows the advice of the Secret Service and security experts in our military, yes, he should follow their advice. But then he goes back and says that he thinks he was advised wrongly to fly on the decoy plane because he says he was at greater risk. So this is something where, even regarding his personal safety, President Trump is not taking direct responsibility. Meanwhile, speaking of bombshells, the Ted Cruz on X is back to attacking Dr. Fauci, claiming that Fauci covered up that COVID vaccines produced an 82% miscarriage rate. This is Ted Cruz, clip 28.
This podcast should make you furious. We now have evidence that Dr. Fauci knew that there were data that demonstrate that the COVID-19 vaccine, the second dose for a woman in her first trimester, had an 82% chance, 82% of causing a miscarriage. It was the equivalent of RU-486, the abortion drug. Dr. Fauci knew this, Pfizer knew this, and yet they went out publicly and they told everyone to take the vaccine, including pregnant women. It is shocking. We're going to lay out the receipts, and it's going to make you really mad.
Okay, this was fact-checked on X by PolyFact, and they pointed out that the 82% figure is a statistical miscalculation. The study cited in the Pfizer report found a miscarriage rate of approximately 10.4% to 12.6% once all participants were included, which is consistent with the normal background rate of 10% to 26% in the general population. So the evidence that there was some dramatic, horrific increase in miscarriages to 82%, not true. A distortion and based on a miscalculation. And then there is the comment on there's much more about the Democrats and their confusion going into 2028. That's even after the midterm elections coming up in 2026. Who are the leading candidates? Possibilities for president. And there's a lengthy list of names with some very curious inclusions. We will get to that and much more coming up in this greatest nation on God's green earth.